Nitimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshulamitanjena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Gurave Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Tadalaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tadabhaktaya Namo Namaha. Yam Pravajantam Anupeta Apeta Krityam Swapaino Viraha Katara Ajuhava Putreti Tan Maitaya Taravo Benedus Tam Sarvabhutam Hridayam Munimanatosmi Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatam Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat Bhaktya Vihina Parada Lakshai Kiptascha Kamari Tarangamadye Kripamai Tvam Sharanam Papanna Brinde Namaste Charanada Vindam Tave Vasmi Najivami Tvayavina Iti Vigyaya Radhe Tvam Nayanam Charanandike Vancha Kalpatarubhascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So we're going to continue hearing about Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Prabhupada, whose appearance day was yesterday. Also one of his wonderful disciples, it is his appearance today, Srimad Bhakti Saranga Goswami Maharaj. I don't know anything about him off the top of my head. I'm thinking that he's a personality who joined when he was quite young. But unless I look up, there's some beautiful things in the writings of Srila Bhaktivedanta Maharaj. I'm sure I could find something there. But we're going to honor him by honoring his guru. I'm sure he will be very happy with that. We acknowledge his great contribution, pray for his mercy. Yesterday we were reading Srila Prabhupada's offering from 1961 on the Vyasa Puja day of Srila Sarasvati Prabhupada. And there were 8 sections. I think we got up to number 3. Okay. And the theme is consistent with everything that we know Srila Prabhupada took from his Guru Maharaj, this intense attachment to the missionary spirit, to spreading the mission of Mahaprabhu. Srila Prabhupada embraced that from their first meeting. And the very first meeting they had with Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Prabhupada, Sarasvati Prabhupada looked at him and said, "You're an educated young man," and his friends, but of course it was Srila Prabhupada that took it up, "You should preach the mission of Mahaprabhu in the English language." I think he also said to the West. And Srila Prabhupada, even though it was his first meeting, and it couldn't have been that long, but he took it to heart very deeply and accepted at that time Srila Sarasvati Prabhupada as his guru, and then began to follow the teachings and the instructions of him, began chanting, in that same way, and he was assisting and serving the preachers of Sarasvati Prabhupada wherever he was living, wherever he went and traveled. But we're getting a vision of the Manubhishta of Sarasvati Prabhupada by the realizations and prayers of one of his most exalted disciples. Right? This is how we understand Sarasvati Prabhupada. Years and years ago, there was a meeting in Navadvip among many of the senior disciples. They were having an Ishtagoshti. And Bhaktivedanta Keshav Maharaj was there, Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj was there. And one younger devotee asked a question. He said, when I read the commentary in the Upadesh Amrita, there seems to be a little difference between the explanations of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and the explanations of Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Prabhupada. And it was the verse, I think it was just Svabhava Jani Tayarvapusascha Doshara, the one about not criticizing a great devotee based on external things, right? And in those purports, Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Sarasvati Prabhupada explain the symptoms of Kanishtam Madhyam and Uttam. Right? I think it's that verse. And there is a little difference in the way they describe it. And he said, how do I understand this? How do we reconcile? Do they have different opinions? And first they asked Bhaktirakshak Sridhar Maharaj, and he said, everything that Bhaktivinoda Thakur has written is perfect, completely perfect. And he said, but I would like to hear from our respected Vinod Bhai. I don't think Bhaktivedanta Keshav should take in sannyas yet. Maybe he had. That's not important. What's important is what he said. And he said everything that Srila Pujapad Bhaktirakshak Sridhar Maharaj has said is correct. There is no error in anything Bhaktivinoda Thakur has said. However, we are disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Prabhupada. And so we understand Bhaktivinoda Thakur through him, right? And who is better to understand the deeper meanings of Bhaktivinoda Thakur than he who from his very youth was constantly with him, who constantly heard from him, worked, edited his books, everything, and was empowered to carry on his mission. So we always approach the previous acharyas through the agency of our own Guru Maharaj. And that way you can understand both principles, what both are saying. And there's never any error in what pure devotees say, but they may be speaking from one angle or another, and we may be seeing it from one angle or another, kind of like climbing a mountain, from the eastern, the western, the southern, and the northern sides, right? 4 people climbing. And first of all, as you climb higher and higher, you're going to get broader and broader perspective of the land around you, right? But the person who's climbing in the east, right, he may see all kinds of fields and plains, right? Like, great plains. And then someone who's climbing on the northern side, he may see forests, right? And like that. And someone on the southern side, he may be seeing desert, right? And someone on the western side, he may be seeing the Pacific Ocean, for instance, right? What they're all seeing and describing is correct. But it's only when they reach the top that they can see all 4 simultaneously and see how they're all part of the same truth, right? They can reconcile and understand. Or the blind men with the elephant, and one has the tail. Oh, it's like a rope. Elephant's just like a rope. Another's got his big leg. Oh, the elephant's like a tree trunk. Another's got his skin. Oh, he's very rough, and I forget what he compared it to. And the trunk, oh, he's like a snake. Right? The tusk is like a marble column. All these things are correct, but, it's only one who has full vision that will see how they all interrelate. So we always depend on our Guru Maharaj. So when our Srila Prabhupada, he actually introduced Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Prabhupada to the world. Right? Who would have known outside of India his greatness? And similarly, Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Prabhupada, he gave the world Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Were it not for him, Bhaktivinoda Thakur would have been lost in history, right? A few scholars may have noticed him and some of his literature, but basically it would have been lost. So we're dependent. So I find it very wonderful to read Srila Prabhupada's glorification because he's revealing the Manubhishta of Srila Sarasvati Prabhupada. And at the same time, we're reinforcing our connection with Srila Prabhupada and thus with our entire Guru Parampara. So we read through 3 sections, and the last one he was talking about Lord Chaitanya's message locked in a cage. Oh, shame, brother, aren't you at all embarrassed, behaving like businessmen to increase your followers? Our master is said to preach. Let the neophytes go in the temples to do nothing but ring bells. And again, we described how Srila Prabhupada also had temples. Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Prabhupada had temples, but those temples were there to support the preaching. But he didn't want people just to end up in the temple without that missionary spirit, without understanding it's all meant to support the evangelical aspect of Mahaprabhu's mission. We were given that mercy, so we should want to share that with others. That was the enthusiasm that our Srila Prabhupada imparted to us. Devotees were so enthusiastic to share, and he received that from Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Prabhupada. What he's expressing here is this enthusiasm and urgency that was put into his heart by Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Prabhupada. So the fourth Vaishistya was, all these are not our master's preaching methods. These are the things done by the caste Goswamis. But just take a look at the miserable condition that has arisen. Everyone has become a sense enjoyer and has abandoned preaching. Now the temple doors are also starting to be locked. I think I read this yesterday. Yeah, but we didn't talk about it so long. So I'll just read it real quick. Go and preach this Bhagavad Dharma. Do not delay any longer. Yeah. Within this earth, there is another earth whose sound is the unequaled penetrating force. And then he quotes this Bengali proverb, the mullah runs just as far as the mosque and no further. But an end to this false preaching today. In other words, Gaudiya Vaishnava culture is not restricted to the temple. The movement, the preaching, and Srila Prabhupada and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Prabhupada sent their preachers everywhere, independent of the temples. When you hear the stories, the traveling of some of these personalities, the austerities they went through, it's just extraordinary. Up to the borders of the seas, all over the earth, pierce the walls of the universe, all assembled together, preach the transcendental vibration. Then our master's worship will be in proper order. Today, make your firm promise. Give up your political play. That's a very important statement. Don't let politics, party feeling, sectarianism interfere with the missionary spirit of Mahaprabhu. Understand anyone taking up that mission is to be honored, respected, and to whatever extent you can, worked with, cooperate together. Why not? We're on the same team. It's only Kanishta vision that creates politics. Bhaktivedanta Thakur says that the demoniac associates of Kamsa, who started the forest fire to burn the cowherd boys and the cows, they represent that sectarian feeling and party spirit. Because what does it destroy? It destroys the realm of devotion. It destroys the devotees, right? Burns them all up. Krishna and all his friends burned up by the fire, but of course Krishna would not stand for that. But that's politics. Politics is ridiculous, and it's always done under the banner of protecting and the true spirit of our guru, of our savior, of our prophet, right? But these Dharma Dvajis, they don't understand anything. Dharma Dvaji is one who waves the flag of Dharma and speaks about it in strong terms, condemning everybody else that's not part of our group, right? But there's another Bengali proverb that one who speaks too much about religion is, a fake. He's just using it, like so many of these televangelists who just stand on the platform and speak with so much emotion and feeling, but they just guilt people, manipulate people emotionally to subvert their intelligence and their genuine spiritual feelings and become dependent on these greedy, profit-mongering personalities. See? On this very day coming together, make your comment, the 5 of you together, and decide what must be done. You have become renouncers, my brothers, so renounce everything. But if you renounce the instruction of the spiritual master, what kind of renunciation is that? One who renounces the bona fide spiritual master, or who tries to enjoy at the expense of his spiritual master, are both useless. First become the servant of your spiritual master, then you will be able to understand these conclusions. And Bhaktivedanta Keshav Maharaj, he wrote a very beautiful article on the occasion of the disappearance of his Guru Maharaj, Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Prabhupada. And he said, on the day when we honor his appearance and disappearance, we will feel separation according to the degree of our devotion and the depth of our devotion. And he said, unfortunately for me, I am feeling separation because I am at a loss because my Guru Maharaj gave me so many things. He bestowed so many facilities on me and comforts, And now that he's gone, I'm bereft of those things, and that's what I'm missing, right? Of course, that's intense humility. But also within that is seeking the praise and honor from Sri Guru, right? But the real gift of Guru is that spirit of service and the realization that everything that we have here is meant for the service of Guru, not for independent enjoyment. We have great facility. Gurudev would always speak about that. Nowadays, we have nice clothing, shoes, blankets, money, all these things. But at the time of the Goswamis, what did they have? Nothing. But they were so deeply absorbed, they never felt a want for anything. So Srila Prabhupada, he lived very austerely. So did Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Prabhupada for a long time, right? Later, he took the wealth that was coming and used that. He built the marble temples. He drove in motor cars, which was unheard of. And this was back in the 20s and 30s, weren't that much of it. But to get to some distant place in the day and come back, he would do that, right? And he one time said, if I could have planes, I would use them. Aviation was just starting, commercial aviation, in the 20s and 30s. He said, and I would use those planes and take the message of Mahaprabhu all over the world, right? So, 5th Vaishishta. Because there is only one God, if his wealth increases, a saintly person renounces all such material desires for profit, adoration, and prestige. Right. Because these things come. Taranga Rangini is one of the symptoms when we are in bhakti. When you are in anishita bhakti, it can come when you're advancing nicely, and you may come to the higher stages of kanishta. One of the biggest obstacles to your advancement past that point is Taranga Rangini, the waves of enjoyment, comforts, money, prestige, title, admiration, things that are coming to you, right? These are great, great obstacles, adoration. And they still come to madhyams and to uttam adhikaris, but as you advance more, you have greater facility for keeping these things at bay. But this desire for pratisthasha, this will stay with you to the very last. You have to be very careful for that. Your gold, my brother, is the source of sense enjoyment. Prabhupada has made this meaningful statement. Give up your riches for preaching. Sit down together and make some special consideration. The Supreme Lord says himself that everything is mine alone. Prabhupada gave his final instruction. Take care. Do this in all respects completely. Otherwise, all your efforts will simply go to waste. O saintly ones, beware. Afterwards, you will repent. Is it really such a difficult task to come together like this? And why does so much have to be said to you? Give up your stubbornness. Act for the welfare of others. There is no time to waste. All my brothers, come. This is the most auspicious time to unite. Srila Prabhupada said this in 1959. He wrote his Viraha Ashta Ashtakam, which is these same themes, this urgency, this desperate plea to come together. And when Srila Prabhupada was leaving, he wanted the devotees, his devotees, to begin to cooperate with the Gaudiya Math. He said, the war is over. Didn't happen. And then even within his society, there was so much difficulty, splitting. When Gurudev was leaving, he also wanted everyone to cooperate. Not happening. Some are cooperating, but basically there are all these different camps. And I think he said that it would, I've heard from Vaishnavas, it will take a few generations more before the Vaishnavas are able to work together in kind of a non-sectarian way. It doesn't mean that everybody has to be under one institution. I remember in the middle 2000s, I had a few occasions to visit some godbrothers, and I talked to some senior guru GBCs, and I said, well, Srila Prabhupada wanted us to work together, with, Gaudiya Math, ISKCON, and they all said the same thing. Prabhupada's desire was that Gaudiya Math be managed by ISKCON. And I thought, they said that, that was their excuse. Well, they have to surrender to us and be under our jurisdiction. They tried to tell Gurudev that. You can preach in our temples, but you have to abide by this rule, this rule. You can't talk about this, you can't talk about that. That's not how you cooperate together. There is an example of cooperating, how it could be done. When you read Bhaktivedanta Bharati Maharaj's descriptions of some of the disciples after the disappearance of Sarasvati Prabhupada, how they had their separate maths and institutions, but how they felt a brotherhood and worked together. There are some that did that really, really nicely. And that's an example for us, right? And sometimes that goes on. But in a broader and a deeper way, this should be communicated and understood and embraced. But we're still a bit from that. But there's another side to that, though. Since everything is under the control of the Lord, right, I can only think this, that when Sarasvati Prabhupada left, all the godbrothers tried to unite under one banner, and so they made one person the Acharya. Right? They elected one person who was a very learned and very close disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Prabhupada. But he had difficulties, and things started going south very quickly. And then politics, and then a whole bunch of senior devotees had to leave. And among them were Srila Sridhar Maharaj, Bhaktivedanta Keshav Maharaj, Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj, all these really highly qualified devotees, Bhaktivivek Bharati, really staunch, accomplished followers of Sarasvati Prabhupada. And they all cooperated together, and they went to Srila Sridhar Maharaj and said, we'll form another institution, and you should be the head. And so it worked like that for a while, but he saw that these were such strong and accomplished personalities, and they didn't always agree on how to do things and what should be done. And they would argue. And so he said, actually, you should all form your own maths and institutions. And this way, your own specialities and power will be allowed to grow. If you stay under one banner, your enthusiasm and initiative may be inhibited. So they did, and they did grow. And they spread very far and wide in different ways in India. And when Srila Prabhupada's mission, when so many godbrothers were kind of forced out, they went here and there. And many of them went into these different Gaudiya missions. And in that, something extraordinary happened. Because they were able to carry Srila Prabhupada's mood into those missions. And an appreciation and understanding of what Srila Prabhupada had done and why he did it was then infused into many of these different missions. And then that kind of opened the door, and many of these acharyas started coming to the West by the assistance and influence of Srila Prabhupada disciples. Right? And so that has gone on. And now you see that many of these missions are very active in the West. Before they weren't. So it's the first stage. And so when there is division, now in Gurudev's Sangha, there's some division, right? But certain ones are preaching very strongly, very nicely. Others are just kind of falling away and weakening and becoming irrelevant. It's part of Mahaprabhu's plan, I believe. Diversification. And remember, Mahaprabhu, the tree of Mahaprabhu has many, many branches. It's described in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Nowhere does it say that this branch is better than that branch, and nowhere is it said that they argued and didn't cooperate. They all loved Mahaprabhu. They all came together in so many times and ways. And so that's the future. But Srila Prabhupada is stressing that. Don't lose that. When will it come to pass that in every room a temple will be established in every corner of the world? I think that means every house, right? That the high court judge will be a Gaudiya Vaishnava, tilak displayed on his forehead, the glory of all, right? That would be the high court, that's a high court judge as an Indian term. It'll probably happen there first. Right now their prime minister is very dharmic, right? They've reclaimed so many dharmic principles, outlawing cow slaughter, things like that. No alcohol sales anywhere near the Vrindavan. So many things are happening. And in the West, in America, certain political appointees and persons are coming with devotional background, which is pretty cool. Maybe they're not great devotees yet, but they're devotees, right? It's a start.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a start. So, well, if you ever become a high court judge, then we'll know, right? So, that a Vaishnava winning votes will be the president of the land, and everywhere this preaching will be extended. When in 1973 or 4, I can't remember, one of my godbrothers, Bhaktisiddhanta, ran for mayor of Atlanta. And it was really interesting because he got enough signatures that they had to put him in the public debates. And he would go dressed like a devotee. I don't remember if he wore karmi clothes or not. I can't remember. But he definitely wore tilak. And he spoke about leaders having to be devotees of God and follow religious principles. And he was just hammering these guys. And this is the South. Back in the 70s, Bible Belt. And all of a sudden, the whole tenor of the debate changed, and they all had to start talking about how they go to church and how godly they were and all like that. And he couldn't get on the official ballot. We went down there and handed out write-in ballots to people at the polls, right? But Srila Prabhupada loved it. He wasn't going to get elected, but then years later, Jimmy Carter, who had been the governor of that same state, Georgia, ran for president. And he ran and he debated. And he also used a lot of what Bhaktisiddhanta had said. In fact, he took some of his speeches verbatim, some sections of his speeches about godliness and coming back to religious principles and this and that. So it happens. It's happening, It's happening, especially as people become more and more dissatisfied with the gross excesses of material civilization and the degradation. Right now there's this whole expose, about these dark people who have done so many bad things. It's coming out. So he says that a Vaishnav winning votes will be the president of the land, and everywhere this preaching will be extended. And the demons loot and plunder the Lord's wealth, while the hapless population cries, alas, alas. Yes, taxes, taxes, over and over. The demons make their plans to cheat the common people, selling whole wheat flour at 32 rupees a mound. Okay, I don't know what a mound is, but it's a whole bunch of kilos, but 32 rupees is a lot of money in 1961. Opening so many factories, will they fill the people's bellies? Out of hunger, the people will be forced to eat grass and mango pits. Right. A 2-paisa thread tied around his neck, and a man says he's a brahmana. Just wearing saffron cloth, and a man calls himself a sannyasi. When we were in Bangalore in one neighborhood staying, these guys would come around once a month or so, and they'd go house to house. They're dressed like sannyasis, and they would aggressively demand some bhiksha from people, right? And they would collect. People just give them, they're sadhus. And they came to our place. And I said, come in. And I sat them down and started having discussions. So what kind of sadhu are you? What do you teach? What do you follow? And it became very apparent. They're just cheaters. We just started blasting them. And then we kicked them out. And they demanded money. I said, you want something from me? You come in, this is what you're going to get. Yeah. I said, you get out of here right now, or I'm going to give you a good thrashing.
How do you know they were cheaters?
Because their demeanor, their arrogance, their aggressiveness, the demanding for money, right? Their aura. They're just these guys that dress up once a month like that to go around. Or they may even lived in a mott, so-called mott, but they weren't following anything. You know. And so... So I think Giridhari was there then. Yeah. So the householders beg from the sannyasis, and the sannyasis have crores of rupees in the bank. Yikes! That goes on. Modern day gurus, even in our spiritual societies, they have a lot of money, some of them. Srila Prabhupada never kept large bank balance. Whatever he had, he would spend on books, building. Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Prabhupada, he had that habit. He had very accomplished, talented people doing books and doing all that accounting for him. And when money came in, they would set aside, okay, this is going to be for the rent, this is going to be for this, that. And so at the end of the month, they would have enough to pay. But if there was money there, he would spend it. And they'd say, but we have to, use it for this and that. He says, no, Krishna will provide at the right time. And we always had that experience also. In any temple, when you're following nicely, you can always, somehow or other, it always comes. One godbrother of mine, Shama Sundar, he told me a story. It was in San Francisco in the early days when they're just starting. And they didn't have any money, and they were behind in their rent. And they didn't know how they were going to get it. And one morning he was walking to the temple, because he lived outside nearby. I think he was married at the time. But they all had that same mood. They were all like totally surrendered. And they said, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And the streets, hilly streets, up and down, San Francisco, and completely empty streets. And the light was just coming. It was just becoming a little bit light. And then all of a sudden down the street, the wind picks up. And coming right at them was money, bills. And they went, what? And they started grabbing it. And they collected what they owed, a few $100. And he brought it to the temple, told the story, and went, whoa, now we can pay our bills. But they didn't. They used it for something else, he said. And that was always our experience in Bangalore. One time, we didn't have any money. We were doing really badly on Sankirtan. And I looked down, and there was a little folded paper. Venugopal from Canada was there with me, and I picked it up, and it was full of rupees. And you never see that in India. Nobody drops rupees, and if they do, someone's going to pick it up. But for some reason, it was right at our feet, and it picked it up.
How much is in it?
Huh? I don't remember. A couple hundred or something, which was a lot back then. A lot back then. So, crores of rupees in the bank, sannyasis, gurus, but, just to use it. You should use it for Krishna's seva. Every day, the influence of Kali Yuga increases. And the poor souls being oppressed by the age of Kali cry in agony. Every day, 10,000 cows are slaughtered. Wow, even back then. And the expert leaders eat untouchable foodstuffs, yes. Men of mud-like intelligence increase day by day. And a husband and wife can dissolve their relationship simply by a word. Everyone has become a witch by the influence of the age. Everyone is unhappy due to the absence of the devotee's mercy. Seventh Vasishtha. The Vaishnavas are famous for being sympathetic towards others' suffering. And that fame will increase by mature preaching. If eternally pure devotional service to Krishna is awakened in everyone, Kali will flee of his own accord, crying, "Ha! Ha!" Mahaprabhu's message is, Praninam upakaraya. Act for the welfare of others. This is the storehouse of happiness, both now and after death. Right. When you preach, you're very happy. Out there, at a table. A lot of it can be hard, but when you connect with one sincere person and you have a nice exchange, and if they take a book or something, you're so much joy. And even if you don't do so well, when you come back, you feel, oh, I've done my best. Guru's happy, then we become happy. So much work has so much work has fallen into your hands. Everyone should join together and do something about it. Vasudeva Vipra paid his obeisance to the Lord and said, please deliver all the living beings. Give all their sins to me, who am most fallen, and relinquish all the suffering of the unhappy souls. Mahaprabhu had asked him to take a boon. He said, if you give me a boon, this is all I want. I want that they should be delivered. Transfer their sins to me. I don't care. I will suffer. And Mahaprabhu was so pleased that he said, of course you feel like that, because you are also Prahlad Maharaj. So, he was the best Vaishnava, Paradukka Dukhi. He found no happiness in gratifying his senses. Means dukkha dukhi, finding unhappiness in the unhappiness of others. Right? What kind of compassion can the non-devotees show? He simply commits offenses with his Dharija Narayan philosophy, which means, God is everywhere. Everyone is God. God, is in the poor person, the beggar, and if you serve, but that becomes perverted. It's one thing to be charitable to everybody because they're all conditioned souls, but this philosophy is that, everyone is Narayan, so you should show respect to all. It's a Mayavad philosophy, right? But then there's no discrimination. If all's equal, everyone's equal, then who sets the example? Who teaches? What are the standards? The Vaishnava's mercy is scientific. Without the mercy of the Vaishnava, the world is simply insurmountable Maya. Right. It's scientific. It's real mercy because it knows what is really to the welfare of unfortunate people. If there were a kingdom of Vishnu and Vaishnavas on earth, then everyone would be happy. Thus say the saintly persons and sages. So why do people cry for Ram Rajya? In other words, the ideal kingdom at the time of Lord Ram. The only cause of such a Ram Rajya would be a God-centered kingdom. Can't have the happiness of Ram Rajya without the spiritual principles that underlie it. Krishna sat Yudhishthira on the king's throne, and the whole world became full of wealth and fortune. as a result of the good qualities of the Vaishnavas. The rivers, streams, trees, fields, and hills were all producing abundantly. And the cows were so full of milk that they floated in the abundance. The birds, beasts, and animals were all free of envy. In the Vaishnava kingdom, there is perfect samsara. The whole world in ecstasy would sing the glories of Hari. Seeing this, the Vaishnava's heart danced in ecstasy. What would be perfect samsara? I mean, samsara is the wheel of karma and birth and death. Perfect samsara means that everybody is progressing properly, step by step, not falling back down, not creating sin, not creating disturbance, but following varnashram properly and evolving and developing, right? And varnashram is also based on service to others and freedom from envy, so very effective. So that's that prayer, remarkable, beautiful prayer. We hear the Manobishta of our Srila Prabhupada, but actually this is the Manobishta of Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Prabhupada. This aspect of his endeavors. This is what he said. This is why he has come to this world. Not to count stars, not to do all these things, but to preach this great message of Mahaprabhu. Very wonderful thing to be infused by. And so we are so grateful to him. We're so grateful to our own Guru Maharaj, his very dear disciple. Also, Srila Prabhupada, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, and all the subsequent followers of Saraswati Thakur. So we'll stop here. All glories to both Srila Prabhupads, all glories to our Srila Gurudev, all the assembled Vaishnavas, Vaishnavis, Haribol, Haribol.